I'd like to call to order the Thursday, November 1st, 2018 meeting of the Urbana Design Review Board. Can we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Cho? Here. Mr. Kunkel?
Here.
Ms. McGuire? Ms. Wadrago? Mr. Roosh?
Here.
And Mr. Weisskopf?
Here.
We have a quorum. The first order of business is staff has requested that we move some new business items to the beginning of our agenda today, just to handle some housekeeping items that will put us in better standing as we go forward through the balance of the agenda. So, Lori?
Thank you. Since this is a new board, so the former Design Review Board was merged with the former MOR Development Review Board to form this brand new board. Welcome to this brand new board of the Design Review Board. So we do need an election of a chair, an election of a vice chair, and approval of the bylaws. I did submit to you, it's on the dais, a couple little revisions to the bylaws that were included in the packet. It's the changes are underlined and struck out. Pretty much it's just for some clarification. There's no real content changes there. So an election of a chair, and I know that the one that has served as acting chair, Scott Kunkel, is willing to do that again, so I think a nomination for a chair would be in order.
I'd like to nominate Scott Kunkel for chair.
Is there a second?
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Aye. Okay. And since turnabout's is fair play, Adam, would you consider functioning as vice chair?
I accept.
So moved. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we have a chair and a vice chair. All right, the next order of business then is to adopt the revised bylaws. And as Lori mentioned, I just kind of glanced through them. It looks like they really are just some minor grammatical changes.
But for clarification, I should say these are brand new bylaws for this new board.
Right.
But just a couple little tweaks today.
But compared to what we had in our previous packet, right? Does anybody have any questions or concerns about any of the content of the bylaws?
I move we accept the bylaws as revised and presented to us today.
Is there a second? Second by Matt. All in favor?
Aye.
And opposed? Okay. Motion carries. The draft bylaws, revised 11-1-18, are now adopted as the approved bylaws. All right, thank you. So let's move on then to approval of minutes. We actually have 3 sets of minutes to approve. We had, if you remember, we have the dissolved design board meeting minutes from the special meeting, then the individual meeting minutes as well. So let's first do the minutes from the dissolved design board meeting on January 25th, 2018, the special meeting.
Before you make a motion on that, just to make things abundantly clear to future people that are looking at these, we neglected to add it to the copies, but if your motion could include amending each set of minutes to add the word dissolved in the title. It's on the agenda, but it's not on the minutes themselves, and we want to make sure that it is clear that it is for the dissolved former bodies.
Fair enough. So if we could formally have the motion be to adopt those minutes and make sure you use the word dissolved in it. So first one would be, I'll move that we adopt the dissolved Design Review Board January 2015-2018 special meeting minutes.
So moved.
All in favor? Opposed? They are approved. Second one is the minutes from the dissolved Design Review Board, dissolved MOR Development Review Board January 25th, 2018 joint meeting. Can I have a motion to approve those?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Approved. Finally, the minutes from the dissolved MOR Development Review Board, March 1st, 2018 special meeting. Motion to approve.
So moved.
Moved by Adam, second by Matt. Yeah, and all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, minutes are all approved. What's it? Yeah, Jonah, get into the mix. All right, any communications? None? All right, we have no continued public hearings. We have no unfinished business. So that takes us to our new public hearing. Want to open case number 2018 MORDRB-02, request by Andrew Fell Architecture for approval of residential development in the MOR Mixed Office Residential Zoning District at 408 West Green Street. We'll begin with a report by staff.
Okay, good afternoon. Okay, so this is an application for review for a 7-unit apartment building at 408 West Green Street in the MOR district. All proposals for new building in the MOR district have to go through a design review process. As you'll recall, for this property there was approval granted for a similar building, which you'll see in your packet on the last exhibit and on your screens in front of you. So approval for this building was granted back in January. There was also a variance granted to exempt the basement living space from the floor area ratio calculations, which passed through City Council a couple months later. But after the approvals were granted for this building that you see in front of you, the cost of some materials, mainly steel, increased greatly. So the original design essentially had to be scrapped, and the building went back to the drawing board. And now what is proposed is what you will see in Exhibit E in front of you. So it shares some similar characteristics to the previous building, but it is a different building and requires new design approvals. So, as always, the board must consider both the MOR application review criteria and an application's consistency with the MOR design guidelines when making your decision. So, on to the review criteria. For the MOR review criteria, number 1 talks about compatibility with the surrounding neighborhood. So the neighborhood surrounding this building has a variety of building types and uses. There are apartments, duplexes, single-family homes, and one commercial building actually next door to the east. The apartment buildings are a mix of single-family homes, or at buildings like 407 and 410 West Green Street. They're older 3-story buildings. Buildings tend to be close to the street. They have their parking areas off of alleys located behind the buildings. They're generally 2.5 to 3 stories tall, and they have main entrances that face the street. So the proposed building, it's certainly more modern in style than other buildings in the area, but it is compatible with the neighborhood character. The use is similar. The scale, the massing, the height, and the orientation and its parking configuration are all compatible with the surrounding neighborhood. Criterion 2 deals with parking and access. So the proposed parking, and I'll pull up a site plan here. Okay, there we go. So the proposed parking would be behind the building. So this is north. North is on the left of the site plan. So the parking's behind the building. It's off of a public alley. It would be maybe a little visible from Green Street, but probably not very visible. There's some bushes that are proposed here that would add some screening from Green Street, but for the most part it would be pretty shielded behind the building and those bushes. Criterion 3 deals with screening and landscaping. So there are 4 trees that would be preserved. I think 3 of those are, well, they're all kind of in the western yard. One of them is in front of the building. There would be new bushes added to the south and east side of the building, and actually looks like a couple on the north side as well. And those would provide landscaping and screening of the parking area and some screening of the garbage enclosure, which would also be enclosed with the fence. The next criterion deals with site details. This talks about exterior dumpsters, storage areas, loading areas, lighting, and signs. So the garbage area, as you'll see on your plan, would be located behind the building and enclosed according to the requirements of the zoning ordinance. There are no exterior storage areas, loading areas, lighting, or signs proposed. There are also some design criteria that are requirements in the MOR district, and those state that the front entrance must face the street. The building walls that face the street must have windows, and parking areas must be located behind the principal structure, and in this case, all those criteria are met. Okay, on to the, and if you're following along in your memo, I'm on page 4 here. Onto the design guidelines themselves. The first guideline gives guidance about the facade zone. I think the one that pertains here talks about mechanical equipment, and it basically says mechanical equipment shouldn't be in the facade zone or in the front of the building. The air conditioner units here would be on the roof, and the garbage would be enclosed behind the building. So staff recommends that the DRB find that the proposal meets the design guidelines for the facade zone. The next criteria is building orientation and patterns. So the proposed building would match the orientation of existing buildings with its having its primary entrance along Green Street. This building would be set back 15 feet, which is actually a little further back than other buildings on the street, but that is the minimum setback that is allowed. So it would be compatible in that respect. As I mentioned, the overall design's a bit more modern than other buildings in the area, but it does include elements that reflect features found elsewhere in the district. Specifically, the two buildings I mentioned before, 407 and 410 West Green, which are next to it and across the street. Those are both 3 stories tall. They both have their facades separated into sort of 3 vertical segments, and the proposed building would mimic those characteristics, although, albeit in a more modern flavor. The front entrance, like others in the district, is it's nearly at grade. It has no porch. It has some small steps leading up to it, and you'll find that elsewhere in the district. So staff recommends that the proposal meets the guidelines for building orientation and patterns. The next criterion is massing and scale. The height to width ratio of the proposed building is right in the mid-range of what you see in surrounding buildings. So that would be compatible with the area. There aren't too many decorative details on the building, but it does have variation in color, in texture, and materials, which would add some interest, scale, and dimension to the building. While the earlier design, and I'll pop to that real quick, had a shed roof sort of set back behind. The new design, it has a flat roof, which is highly compatible with the other buildings in the area, especially apartment buildings. So we recommend a finding that the proposal meets the guidelines for massing and scale. The next criterion is openings. The front facade, as you can see on this picture, has adequate openings. They break up sort of the larger expanses of the facade. They also reflect the architectural style of the building. The windows are in proportion to the facade, and they provide a consistent rhythm of openings. Staff recommends that finding that the proposal meets the guidelines for openings. The next criterion is outdoor living space. This does have some outdoor living space, but it's on the back of the building, so this criterion is not really relevant. So we recommend a finding that this is not a relevant criterion pertaining to the proposal. Next is materials, and the materials proposed for the exterior are wood cladding, metal cladding and siding, and concrete block. All of these are long-lasting, durable materials that will protect the integrity of the structure, and staff recommends a finding that the proposal meets the guidelines for materials. Next is parking areas. As I mentioned a couple times, they'd be behind the building off of the existing alley. To the west, there's a fence that would screen that parking from the adjacent property. And to the east, there is a parking lot for the Timothy John Salon building, so screening is not needed on that side. And again, the proposed landscaping would help to screen it from Green Street. So we recommend a finding that the proposal meets the guidelines for parking areas. Finally, landscaping. As I mentioned, there are 4 mature trees on site, including one along Green Street that will be retained, and additional landscaping will be added to provide screening and to enhance the site. Staff recommends that the DRB find that the proposal meets the guidelines for landscaping. The options you have in this case are to approve the proposal as presented, to approve the proposal as modified by any changes, or to deny the proposal. Staff recommends the Design Review Board approve the proposal with the condition that the building and site shall be constructed in general conformance with the plans attached in Exhibit E. That concludes my report, and I will take questions. I know the property owner and the architect are here as well, if you have questions for them.
Any questions for staff at this point?
Double check. What is the what is the parking requirement in MOR?
So the parking requirement is based on the use,
Right.
and there would be 7 spaces that would be required for this, based on the unit mix.
So am I missing something? Is there? I see 6.
Yeah, sorry, I should have mentioned that. So they,
Oh, okay, right.
yeah, they've talked to
Those
the
Timothy
Timothy
John's,
John owner, and
So they would
They
have
can
within like
lease.
250 feet, or what is it?
I feel like it might even be within 600 feet.
Okay, cool.
But
So they
but
rent
it-
one from Timothy John's. Okay.
Yeah, they can. Yes, they can lease spaces from them.
Cool.
Yep.
Any other questions for Kevin? Okay, all right. All right. At this point, would invite the applicant or applicant's representative to come forward and provide any additional information they think might be helpful in this case, or provide any additional evidence.
Andrew Fell, I'm the applicant. Thanks for having the meeting. I won't really rehash the design part, but I'd like to at least explain why we're here again. So, as I think this body knows, sometimes it's a little hard to get the design review committees and the zoning board of review together. When we first started this project, and we had submitted it for the design review, the building actually had a unit in the basement. And so sort of through this process, discovered that in this zoning district, unless it's a single-family residence, the basement counts in your FAR. And that was kind of missed in the initial review and design of the building. So we initially submitted this to the design review board a year ago, however long it was ago. When that was initially submitted to the city, the building had a unit in the basement. And so during the review process, it was discovered and pointed out that that had to count towards our FAR. So in terms of the design review board meeting, we took the unit out of the basement. When the building was initially designed, it marginally cash flowed. I think I had a little bit of discussion after the meeting, I think with Scott and with Kim about, is this building going to make it? And at that point, yeah, we could make it with the basement. Just barely, but we could make it. So it took a while to get the design review board meeting accomplished. And after that was approved, then our next step really was to get this unit included in the basement if we could to make the building possible. And again, with the zoning board of review, that takes a little while because sometimes there's not a quorum, so it takes a little while to get that process concluded. And during the span of time it took to do all that, we have a new round of gigantic tariffs, which made this building cost about 20% more, which made it not cash flow. So at that point, our job as the designer is to try to make this thing cash flow. And to do that, we had to greatly simplify the structure and some of the materials that were used. We tried to keep in the materials, but the structure got a lot simpler, and we have used the zoning variance to include the unit in the basement. So now the building, again, with the increases in cost, currently marginally cash flows, so it can get done. Our fear is that in another week, the hurricane in Florida is going to make this building not cash flow again. So I'm not in the habit of asking to approve something just to have it approved, but the owner has been in the unfortunate situation of being totally beyond his control, of losing a year of rental income on this building, and it might happen again. So we really want to get this thing approved and get started if we can. So I'm here to answer any questions, but I just want to at least explain why we're here again.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions for Mr. Fell?
Does the third floor include an extra unit, or is that just the layout's a little bit different with the shed roof not being there anymore?
No, the layout's just different. I mean,
Okay.
part of what we had to do to make this work is just,
Yeah.
as a layperson, it's a little hard to digest what happens in the drawings, but the structure is greatly simplified. So that meant the funky roof angles go away and everything sort of squares up.
Sure, okay.
With the material palette that you have on there, that sort of cantilevered, or maybe it isn't cantilevered, section at the front with a triple window, is that part of the block assembly?
No, we're going to just clad that in metal.
That's going to be clad in metal,
Yeah.
okay. Anybody else have any questions for Mr. Fell as it relates to the applicant's petition? No? Okay,
I'll be here.
great, thank you.
Thank you.
At this point, if there are any proponents in the audience for the petition, we can hear evidence or input from them. Seeing none, we'll move on to opponents of the request may present evidence or be heard. Also seeing none. Any others that wish to present evidence or be heard? Again, none. Any other additional comments by city staff that are required at this point? I'm going to assume that you don't need to rebut anything. Okay. No opponents to rebut. Do you wish to present a summary of your evidence at this point? All right. At this point, the board's open to present questions to any parties to the presentation. Could be staff, applicant, and we should just limit those questions, though, to the things that are for the purpose of ascertaining facts related to the petition. So, anybody have any questions? Okay. All right. At that point, then, I guess I would entertain a motion. If you remember, if our options are to either approve the petitioner's application as presented, approve it with conditions, or disapprove. Staff has suggested approval with a specific condition of the building and site being constructed in general conformance with the plans attached in Exhibit E. I would ask in the motion that it's made, that if it is a motion for approval, that you would reference either directly or indirectly the findings of fact that are included in staff's report.
I do have a point of clarification. What would be the purpose of adding on this condition of in general conformance that wouldn't already be in the application?
Well, that's just that's a general condition that we add to pretty much any site plan that gets approved. I think it's just maybe gives the approval more force. I don't know that it's necessary,
Okay.
because I don't think that they would, do something totally different than what they've proposed, but we just sort of put that in to cover ourselves.
Sure. I'm just curious, like, if they were to have, like, some sort of a material needed to be changed because of some sort of a circumstance that came up, like, how much leeway would they have if we didn't have that in, as if we did have it in, so to speak? I mean, obviously, we don't want them to put up a 5-story building, so to, because that wouldn't be within the within the conditions of this district, but, yeah.
Yeah, well, so the condition is written, it says general conformance. So if there were, say, a material change, that would be a determination by the zoning administrator to determine if that change warranted further review by the DRB or not. So that would just be a judgment call.
Okay.
I see. Ma'am, I can understand your point, though, because to some extent, I mean, the petitioner is bound by the content of the petitioner's application. So if that's already there, yeah.
I'm just curious why, the extra, so, just curious.
Okay. All right, well, I would entertain, I'm sorry.
Does the petitioner want to respond to that question?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, please do.
Just in terms of the general conformance statement, Scott will appreciate this maybe more than the others, but we run into this time to time on the Plan Commission where we approve something and for instance, you're approving this building exactly how we drew it. And what happens when we get to construction drawings or even constructing the building, let's just pick something. There's a sand vein too close to the surface, so we have to lift the building 6 inches out of the ground. You have to now approve that unless we get a substantial conformance statement in your approval that lets the zoning administrator make those minute changes to the building that we have to do. So it's in a way to protect the board from us having to come back 50 times because a window is a little smaller, a little bigger, or the building's 4 inches taller, or any kind of little detail like that. So I think that's sort of the intent of just making it in general conformance, so that we have leeway, but the zoning administrator has to approve those changes.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay.
That makes total sense. Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah.
All right, thank you. All right. If no other questions, would entertain a motion at this point.
Do you want to do it, or should I? I move that we approve this petition with the condition that the building and site shall be constructed in general conformance with the plans attached in Exhibit E, and that we include the findings of the city staff.
Sure. Would you mind just adding the case number to that first as well?
Case number 2018-MORDRB-02.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second?
Just one question.
Of course.
So adding the condition, if the window does change or something happens, does this have to come back?
No, it helps them.
That
Okay,
helps.
good.
Yeah. All right, there's a motion that's looking for a second.
Second.
I'll give that one to Jonah. All in favor? Well, actually, I think we need to do this by roll call, don't we? Yes.
Mr. Cho?
Yes.
Mr. Kunkel?
Yes.
Mr. Roosh?
Yes.
And Mr. Weisskopf?
Yes.
Okay. Motion is approved 4-0. All right, and at that point, I'm going to close the public hearing on case number 2018 MORDRB-02. All right. We've already done our new business. That got moved up to the beginning. Any audience participation? Staff report? No study session? Unless anybody else has anything, we stand adjourned. Thank you, everyone.